Hey, Bob, what did you think of the market action? Let me just ask you, I guess the question forefront on investors' minds is, have markets bottomed?
Well, I think we had a successful test of the 1100 low from early August last week, and we're bouncing from that. That doesn't mean we're not going to have more tests along the way. The European situation, as you discussed in detail earlier, is still out there. Until we have some understanding that we can hold all of that together, we're not out of the woods. Having said that, it's nice to see markets up 10% from the lows of last week.
That's right. They have bounced back, Bob. Let's talk about U.S. earnings season. I mean, all eyes really on Q3 numbers, which basically some say will drive sentiment in the next 3 months. So one set of results does not a trend make. I know that. I'm going to miss for Alcoa. But what do you think we'll get from Q3 earnings this year?
Yep. So pretty good news yet again. This will either be the best quarter in history for the S&P 500 in terms of earnings, or second best. We may not be able to beat last quarter because third quarter is seasonally weak, but the news should be pretty good. Corporations have managed their businesses well. They have some top-line growth and pretty good margins, so we're expecting good earnings. I think that's the good news. The concern will be, and what do they say in their guidance going forward? And I think we'll get a lot of I don't knows. And that could be the next thing we worry about because of the absence of visibility. But the earnings themselves should be pretty good.
Okay, the earnings themselves, meaning revenue, income, et cetera, we're expecting a lot of beats, but guidance might be poor. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying guidance will be poor. I think guidance will be a lot of uncertainty, and markets have plenty of that, and we probably get another dose of it. But the third quarter earnings, as reported, should be pretty good news and probably a modest beat.
Okay, well, let's talk about the U.S. economy, because we have had some economic data points that shows that the economy continues to grow. We're not in double dip just yet. I know in the past that you don't expect a double dip in the U.S., but have you priced in the risk from the European side? I mean, do you think Greece is going to default?
I think Greece will default. They can't pay their bills. The question is it an organized or a chaotic default? An organized default we can live with. The authorities have work to do if they're going to get there, and the banking system would be okay. But we need action from the European politicians, the policymakers, et cetera. That is the big issue, I think, overhanging global equity markets. The other issue is important, but they're sideshows at the moment.
What about this talk of a banking crisis? You know, we heard from Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy talking about trying to take all necessary steps to ring-fence lenders. Do you think that's enough to prevent what some are maybe predicting another Lehman's event, which again will hit the credit markets and we could see a freeze up again?
Yeah, hopefully we can avoid that. I hope that the Europeans took good notes when the U.S. went through that in 2008, and there's obviously been a lot of conversation back and forth. But I think that development over the last bunch of days relative to, say, a week or 10 days ago is we think the policymakers understand now that they need to simultaneously do work on the sovereign issues and the banks simultaneously. That doesn't mean they have the answer, but we think they're starting to get that, and we would agree. You can't do one and let the other go, and that's part of organizing a default that we can live with, as opposed to one that's more chaotic that would affect not only the European but the global economy, and then the U.S. recessionary question has to come up again. But back to your earlier question, the U.S. economy is doing just fine, thank you. Not great, but we think it's actually going to be 2% growth in the second half compared to only 1% in the first half.
Okay, so extrapolate for me. If the U.S. economy is doing just fine, in your views, you have some risk from the European side. What does this mean for equity markets going into year's end?
Well, again, it comes back to, does Europe hold together? If the answer is yes, the rally that you've seen is just the beginning. If not, we've got to go back and do some damage, because that will be a financial problem that we'll have to meander our way through, and that won't be a whole lot of fun with economies just not in great shape, just meandering their way through, or muddling through, if you will. So that's the question, and I think we're not going to know for some time, and so we're going to have this volatility. We move kind of up, and then we move back down. This 1,100 to 1,250 trading range for the S&P 500 has been around for several months now.
Okay, well, earlier this year you predicted 4% gains for years, and I assume that's been thrown out the window. What about for the next 12 months? Do you expect stocks to go higher from here? How much higher?
Yeah, look, the S&P 500 has a yield that's the same as the 10-year Treasury. I've been doing this for 30 years and have never seen that before. I think that means either we're going to have a depression, and I don't think there's a very high probability of that, or stocks are a pretty good place to be, and I'm going to assume it's the latter and that the economy continues to muddle through. Earnings are okay, and if we can get a relief on these cheap valuations because some of the uncertainty disappears around Europe, et cetera, then equities can be okay.
Okay, one more question for you, Bob. We have this currency bill on China being passed through the U.S. Senate. John Boehner, the House Speaker himself, has called this dangerous. Some are saying this is going to spark a trade war between the two global superpowers. What do you make of this, of what's happening in politics between the U.S. and China right now?
You know, I'm glad you used the word politics. That's what this is. It's about politics and trying to get votes, reassure voters that I care about you and your job. Here in the U.S. It passed the Senate, not a surprise. The House, hopefully not. It may not even come up to the House, and as you reported earlier, we're not sure the administration's in favor of this either. So we believe we need China, we believe China needs the U.S., and we need to find ways to play nice in the sandbox. Doesn't mean there aren't issues, but we've got to wrestle them to the ground and help each other out.